We are here on behalf of Employment and Social Development Canada as the committee implementing the Return to Office mandate. Today, we are pleased to share an implementation plan that responds to the proposed directive from the Treasury Board Secretariat. Next slide, please. The TBS directive has two recommendations. One, to address appropriate use of social media starting March 1st. And two, an RTO mandate that requires all staff to be in office 4 days a week starting June 1st. There are multiple risks of not responding to this directive. Public servants must deliver the high-quality services Canadians expect and deserve. We are a vast and diverse country, and for many of our citizens experiencing a digital divide, in-person interactions are the only means to access essential government services. It is not just a matter of preference. Canadians have made it clear that they expect services in a way that makes sense for them. Public servants have an obligation to deliver services to where citizens are, not the other way around. Public servants must also uphold the integrity and credibility of government institutions. Expressing discontentment with RTO or other policies on social media directly contradicts their duty of loyalty. It raises concerns about their ability to remain neutral and deliver services with excellence, leading to weakened public trust. Exercising restraint and judgment on social media is not just about compliance, it is a reflection of our shared commitment to the public service ethos. Our committee has prepared a pragmatic implementation plan for the proposed TBS directive, one that upholds the values and ethics code for public servants and the duty of loyalty principles within the ESDC Code of Conduct. Next slide, please.
The goal for our implementation plan is to foster an ethical and transparent workplace that prioritizes citizen-centered service while exemplifying a commitment to excellence and responsible stewardship. To support this goal, we have devised 3 objectives that our chosen implementation plan will achieve. First is to increase understanding of and ensure compliance to the social media and RTO directives, thus reinforcing the core values outlined in the ESDC Code of Conduct. Second is to standardize the RTO implementation at ESDC through a thorough workforce review, ensuring compliance with Treasury Board timelines. And third, to revise the ESDC Code of Conduct to incorporate a social media use framework, reinforcing the duty of loyalty. A return to in-person work is not just about where public servants work. It is about reaffirming the government's commitment to democratic accountability and public trust. Next slide, please. I will now walk you through the 3 options that we considered for our implementation plan. First is the expedited approach. It focused on speed, implementing immediate RTO and social media restrictions with minimal review, utilizing data collected in previous focus groups. While efficient, this approach risked overlooking key concerns raised by employees and lacked a clear accommodation plan, potentially leading to further discontentment. The second one we considered is the consultative approach. It prioritized a prolonged RTO transition, immediate social media restrictions, and an extensive review process with individualized employee feedback and training. While this ensured thorough input, it would not comply with the Treasury Board timelines. Therefore, we have selected our third option, a staggered approach, as it is the most balanced path forward. It involves implementing a phased return to office plan to address infrastructure, role concerns, and operational needs, while creating a social media use framework to support the restrictions. Next slide, please. As we can see, this staggered approach allows us to meet all of our objectives. It ensures compliance with social media restrictions and RTO directives. This plan standardizes RTO implementation through a structured workforce review, completed by a task force that we will explain shortly. The addition of a social media use framework to the ESDC Code of Conduct will provide clearer guidelines on appropriate social media use. This approach addresses infrastructure and overlapping role concerns raised by Service Canada employees and employment and training advisors, while also staying in line with the Treasury Board timelines. Finally, by collecting staff accommodations, along with a clear notice period for RTO, we ensure a balanced transition. This approach implements staff concerns and prioritizes public needs, working to strengthen trust and workplace ethics. Next slide, please.
We are proposing implementing a two-pronged strategy within the staggered approach to ensure a structured and transparent return to office transition. The first prong, the review, is led by the Strategic Task Force for RTO Implementation and Departmental Excellence, or STRIDE, assessing key factors that affect the ability of employees to carry out the directive to create an equitable RTO implementation plan. The second prong focuses on workplace accountability and public discourse. As per Treasury Board timelines, disciplinary measures through currently established channels for noncompliance with social media directives will begin to take effect March 1st. And the proposed social media framework will be ready by June 1st to guide responsible communication on social media. To ensure we stay on track, we have developed KPIs, which we've included in Appendix A. Together, these efforts support a measured implementation while upholding workplace integrity and public trust, with the ideals of duty of loyalty, excellency, and respect for democracy at its core. Next slide, please. STRIDE's review ensures data-driven decisions rather than mere policy enforcement. Their focus is on balancing collaboration, professional development, and service excellence while addressing employee concerns. Public-facing roles in particular require interaction to uphold service standards and public trust. Canadians expect a visible government presence, and STRIDE is facilitating a smooth transition to meet these expectations. During the March to June timeline, STRIDE is focusing on assessing classified positions, IT readiness, especially in regions experiencing the digital divide, hybrid agreements, office capacity, and accessibility issues to determine phase return needs. Infrastructure and safety concerns are key. We also recognize that transitioning to a 4-day office schedule may be challenging for some employees. To support them, we've established a system where employees can apply for accommodations specific to this timeline based on circumstances beyond their control. Each request will be reviewed by STRIDE with appropriate adjustments to their RTO timelines determined accordingly. We will also equip managers with the tools to enforce policies equitably, promote accountability, and resolve grievances effectively through ESDC's online curricula platform, SABA. Leadership must set the example. Our strategic communications will strive to ensure clear updates through Q&A sessions, an internal FAQ, and any other sessions that are deemed necessary to prevent miscommunication and uncertainty. After implementation, STRIDE will also develop suggestions for implementing attendance tracking and ongoing monitoring post-June 1st, balancing consistency with adaptability to address employees' concerns. While STRIDE's mandate is to ensure RTO implementation, we want to emphasize that this does not preclude any other arrangements being made to respect the duty to accommodate as it pertains to the common hybrid model. Next slide, please. The STRIDE timeline is again structured from March 1st to June 1st to meet the Treasury Board's RTO mandate while ensuring transparency, consistency, and operational readiness. Given the tight time frame, our focus is to ensure we have the capacity to execute this effectively and mitigate risks, and we will address the resources needed shortly. To meet this deadline and strengthen public confidence in ESDC's operational integrity, STRIDE is taking a structured approach. A thorough and timely review is achievable with a focused effort and appropriate resource allocation. However, we recognize that while our objective is to have 85% of employees in office by June 1st, our review may indicate that full compliance cannot be reached immediately. To this end, we are fully committed to maximizing in-office presence by this deadline, while establishing tailored timelines beyond June 1st to accommodate remaining transitions as needed. By executing this plan as designed, we strive for a transition that reinforces public trust in ESDC's ability to fulfill its obligations. Next slide, please.
Prong 2 of our staggered approach addresses employee social media use and subsequent disciplinary action. First, we're reinforcing ESCC's current feedback mechanisms, including mediation to support conflict resolution, ensuring all employees have a voice in this process. We encourage staff to engage with the federal government-wide Center for Information Resolution and Coaching, exhausting all options for resolution instead of resorting to social media. The Human Resources Branch would manage any potential disciplinary action in conjunction with the Treasury Board, depending on the severity of the branch. To support this, we're rolling out a social media use framework that will provide clear guidelines for responsible online behavior to accompany ESCC's code of conduct. For staff, this means refraining from commenting on government policies or programs on social media. We don't intend to restrict political activity and speech beyond what is already permitted by the code of conduct, but to limit speech that could undermine the ministry and its operations in line with the duty of loyalty and public servants' values of neutrality and impartiality. In addition, the March 1st directive prohibits the use of social media on government assets in order to maintain compliance and safeguard our ethical standards. Mandatory training modules will be developed for both staff and leadership, with established clear milestones for content creation, testing, and rollout. For staff, the focus will be on how to ethically navigate social media while respecting the duty of loyalty and maintaining professionalism. Leadership training will focus on fostering a culture of ethical social media use and values-based team management, reinforcing the importance of neutrality through leading by example. We'll also be announcing these policies through a public news release, ensuring that both our employees and the public are aware of the changes. Clear, consistent, strategic communications will be essential as we move forward. Ultimately, we want public servants to feel empowered to navigate social media responsibly and with integrity, knowing that accountability is key to maintaining the ministry's ethical standards. Overall, the primary objective of our framework is to not monitor employees, but to establish clear guidelines for appropriate behavior and highlight the structured process for addressing concerns when they arise. Next slide, please. To roll out our plan, we phase it into 4 aspects. Phase 1, immediate compliance, will begin on March 1st. From that date, we'll ensure consistent enforcement of progressive disciplinary actions for social media-related breaches, if necessary, which will be aligned with our collective bargaining agreements. However, through education and awareness, we expect employees to comply with the guidelines of our social media framework. In phase 2, we'll be conducting jurisdictional scans of other frameworks and directing the STRIDE task force in gathering insights through feedback from stakeholders, such as the Office of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner. This phase will help inform a well-rounded framework. Then we'll move to phase 3, which will involve STRIDE developing the social media framework by studying and adapting existing models. For example, benchmarking existing frameworks in Ontario, British Columbia, and the United Kingdom. And finally, in phase 4, we'll launch public relations initiatives and share internal communications about the framework status. And we'll also prepare for the rollout of training modules for both employees and leadership. With the full implementation deadline set for June 1st, we're confident this timeline will guide us through the smooth and successful launch of the new framework. Next slide, please. As we move forward with the implementation of the recommended staggered approach, we anticipate several medium and long-term implications. Medium-term implications will be positive as shifts in the workplace occur and employee grievances from social media on RTO policies are being integrated. By implementing staff feedback into our review process, we aim to create a more transparent and consistent approach to employee conduct. Continuous adjustments will ensure these policies remain effective, aligned with our core values, and responsive to employee needs. In the long term, we'll start to see a stronger, more cohesive ethical culture within the ministry as the integration of these policies reinforces our commitment to the duty of loyalty, accountability, and other core values outlined in the ESCC Code of Conduct. In the immediate and short term, we'll see a heightened focus on compliance with social media and RTO policies, while clear communication will be key to addressing employee concerns and ensuring understanding. This proactive approach will ultimately guide and build trust and maintain alignment with the values that guide us. Next slide, please.
Our approach prioritizes the utilization of in-house resources. For STRIDE, we propose naming representatives from key departments. Considering the dedication required for a task of this scope, we propose that staff be assigned to this task force based on the federal guidance on assignments and secondments. For the development of the social media framework, we are proposing cross-departmental collaboration. Considering that internal resources are being utilized, further budgetary appropriations for staff are unlikely. However, following the completion of the STRIDE review, there may be budgetary considerations for infrastructure adjustments and accommodations, which will eventually be referred to Public Services and Procurement Canada. Next slide, please. We acknowledge that there are multiple risks associated with this plan. With any action against social media speech, there is strong public perception that constitutional rights are being infringed. Perception may be powerful, but legal precedent, such as the 1985 Fraser case, has established precedents for duty of loyalty to the government. We thus consider perception risks to be minimal. More pressing risks involve employees. The probability of attrition is high, and so is the risk of falling employee morale. To proactively address these risks, we will honor agreements and the duty to accommodate when rolling out RTO through our STRIDE review. Additionally, we're reinforcing existing conflict resolution methods, which is why we consider attrition and employee morale to be moderate risks. The highest level of risks are threefold. Unions, such as the PSAC and CEIU, are highly likely to resist the RTO mandate. Any strike action prior to our June 1st deadline is not possible, but collective bargaining agreements are expiring in June 2025. There's a high probability of strikes after June unless compromises in certain areas are made at the bargaining table. Another risk is the current legal challenge that PSAC has filed against the TBS, which is yet to unfold in court. Current and forthcoming TBS directives will be impacted by the outcome of the hearing, and our committee will adapt implementation accordingly. However, this risk is unlikely to materialize in court before the June 2025 deadline. Third is the potential inability to complete implementation within the 3-month timeframe. To mitigate this risk, it is crucial to secure sufficient resources and maintain a laser-sharp focus on established KPIs. Leadership buy-in is absolutely crucial. Next slide, please.
A strong communication plan is crucial for the success of the RTO transition and social media restrictions. As we've already discussed how we will engage with employees, I'll focus on 4 other key stakeholders. First is the public. We recognize that public trust has eroded. To rebuild it, we're committed to bringing employees back into the office while introducing a social media framework to support professional development. Regular updates will be provided to keep citizens informed of progress. For the Treasury Board, we will share regular updates through work plans and reports. For the media, transparency is our priority. Through proactive media engagement, we're ensuring transparency of process while balancing the employee concerns with respecting public preference for in-office work. And last but not least, for unions, we value their input and are committed to a clear and standardized transition. Our review process is designed to address employee concerns while balancing operational goals of 4 days a week in office. This communication plan will prioritize transparency while addressing stakeholder needs throughout the RTO transition and social media use framework implementation. Next slide, please. In conclusion, in-person service is a public expectation. Canadians want government employees back in the office for direct, accountable, and accessible services. A physically present public service strengthens trust, democratic values, and reinforces the principle that government should serve the people where they are. The impact of our approach goes beyond ESDC. As one of the most citizen-facing departments, we set a precedent for other federal agencies. A well-executed RTO plan and accompanying social media framework will serve as a model for ethical governance. While risks like workforce resistance remain, failing to act would further erode public confidence. Our staggered approach ensures a structured transition, balancing government objectives and employee concerns. The decisions we make today will impact the service for years to come. Let's ensure they set the right course, one that restores trust, strengthens institutions, and upholds the highest standards. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for putting together such a comprehensive brief to us. And I know, in a week, it's incredible how much work you did. So I want to thank you all for the incredible work you did. And for how you presented it to us. So I know it's hard to do that take up so much time during the reading week, but we can't thank you enough. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Guy Giorno, to talk about some of the trade-offs and some of the workplace issues that need to be dealt with.
So thank you very much. I want to thank you for the comments you made about loyalty and the reference to the Fraser case. I mean, it's obviously fundamental that Canadians have confidence that public servants are going to do their jobs and implement policies without, well, neutrally. But in this particular case, it seems the policy that people are commenting on social media is about their working conditions. These aren't just public servants who are implementing programs for Canadians, they're also employees who are saying something very fundamental about what they think of their treatment as employees. Does that distinction matter?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that that distinction does matter, and I think it's reflected in the STRIDE task force, where we understand that the Treasury Board has implemented this mandate that everybody is back to work in 4 days a week. However, we wanted the STRIDE task force not only to review all of these and be able to review IT readiness and infrastructure readiness, but also serve as a symbol that we take their concerns seriously. We know that RTO implementation is not going to be uniform across the board. And so I think that is baked right into that review process.
Thank you. I don't have a follow-up, Noah.
Okay, wonderful. Along the same lines and but with a little bit more of a different focus, I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Suzanne.
Thank you, Noah, and thank you for your presentation. It was very comprehensive. So I see in your recommendation that you set out revising the ESDC Code of Conduct to incorporate a social media framework. And I think that's a very ambitious and on point recommendation. And then I see on slide 13 of your assessment, your presentation has an assessment and it lists the perception of infringement as low. I wonder if you could speak to me just very briefly. The actual directive says that an employee may not comment on issues where the government has taken a public position, regardless of whether it occurs during work hours or in their personal time. And then going to the Fraser decision that my colleague just mentioned, we see this balance of being able to democratically speak with liberty and your duty to loyalty. So in this social media refresh that you're going to append to the new code of conduct, will this be a provision that will be mirrored by the values and ethics code? And if so, how do you see those coming together?
Thank you for the question. The social media framework is acting as a deterrent for social media use and online comments. We're referencing, for example, the Fraser case to benchmark and to limit public comments on social media that would directly affect an employee's ability to perform their job impartially or in a way that could damage the reputation of the government or department. So we're not limiting speech that falls within legal protections, which includes whistleblowing or speaking out about issues that threaten public safety, health, or security, as outlined in the ESC's Code of Conduct. But while the framework sets limits on speech that impacts the integrity of public service work, it also recognizes the importance of protecting employees' rights to freedom of expression, particularly when it involves matters of public interest or lawful criticism.
If I may speak a little bit to the risk aspect of it, we consider this to be a low risk because once the social media framework is added to the ESDC Code of Conduct, it will be made public. It will be based, and it is based on precedents that we have researched and found. We have referenced social media frameworks that currently exist in the UK, Ontario, British Columbia, where it's based on principles because it is impossible to clearly define what is acceptable and what is not, but it is possible to set down rules and principles about what is acceptable and what isn't. And we believe that that nuance will help the public realize what our intents are. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Nothing further, no.
Nancy, I was going to call on you anyway, but you have your hand up, so it's.
I'll again express my appreciation for the work and the presentation. I'm really interested the accountability that you set out for this task force. STRIDE is something of great interest to me, and so I was wondering, you know, when it comes to implementing these two directives along the same time frames, you know, what advice maybe would you be giving to the STRIDE members, you know, as they're doing this work about potentially the nexus between these changes?
Thank you so much for that question. I think this is a very pressing issue, because if they're working in tandem, sort of two at the same time, there needs to be touch points, and we need to make sure that they understand that both of them, while their objectives are different, that they need to be working together. And that's why we've already prescribed that STRIDE will be working in tandem and having regular communications with the social media framework development group and making sure that everybody is on the same track. And I think that through that synergy, we know that it will be very resource intensive for those 3 months, but we're hoping that because this is a very pressing issue, and we know that employees have already voiced their discontent for the way that we've handled RTO in the past, that we hope that everybody will be on the same page in that respect, and hopefully that synergy will produce something that is equitable for everybody, employees and managers both.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Conscious of time, I'm going to actually ask a question, if you don't mind. One of the things that we in ESDC really wanted was for the committee to actually consider the directive in the context of ESD work itself. Can you comment on how it's going to be adapted to the needs of our specific ministry and what we specifically do?
So thank you so much for that question. So we recognize that ESDC is the most public facing of the federal government's assets. And we believe that through the STRIDES task force, we recognize that it's spread out throughout the entire region. And looking at the infrastructure component, and then also looking at the classified positions, what is actually on-site imperative and what can be sort of a hybrid situation. Looking at that through the STRIDE task force will allow us to sort of orient this to an ESDC situation. We realize that, you know, trainers who are moving from the national capital region to some other place, maybe a remote outpost in Yellowknife, we understand that could be an issue. And so we've put in place that accommodation system specific to this timeline to work with them to see if there's anything outside of their control that we can help with, like, for example, the relocation services that the federal government has in place, or, you know, spousal work searching support. So we're confident that this could be really adapted to ESDC.
Just to add very little to that, part of the reason why we chose to go with internal resources is also to really customize the solutions that the task force comes up with to the ESDC context, which is why we have the list of departments that will be reviewing each of the job classifications, where we have representation from human resources, finance, and IT, who are very cognizant of the very real constraints that ESDC faces all over the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. With respect to the actual staffing, right, and this is a little bit of a follow-up question. So I think I heard that you will actually be adapting this not only to the ministry, but to the specific job functions within the ministry.
Yes, so one item of the case that, or sorry, of the task that we pulled out was the conflict between Service Canada employees and employment and training advisors, specifically infrastructure space, so them sharing an office. It was mentioned that the managers are having to manage conflict between them, but also that there is role overlap. So within the task force, one of the KPIs we have set for them is to look through their different positions, see where that overlap exists, and define them clearer for staff. We understand that clarity was probably the largest issue for staff from common hybrid work model 3 days a week moving into this. So that's really what we wanted to address here, and how we specifically will look at their roles to make sure that that's clear for them when they start sharing the space again.
Okay, and thank you so much, colleagues, for all of your advice to our RTO Implementation Committee.